G'day and welcome to the Ball Boys Fantasy Basketball Podcast. We are talking injury updates on today's podcast, leading out of the All-Star break. Who's injured, who's coming back, we'll let you know. Let's go!
Jordan open, Chicago with the lead! Bryant to Shaq!
Not a game. We talking about practice.
LeBron James with no regard for human life. Anything's possible!
Out to Allen, his three-pointer, bang! Curry for three, wow! Unbelievable! Making it rain in New York. We the North are now we the champions.
Not the destination, it's the journey. Mamba out.
G'day and welcome to the Ball Boys Fantasy Basketball Podcast. We are talking injury updates, as I mentioned earlier. My name is Mitchell Casey, and you can find me on Twitter at BallBoysNBA and on Instagram at BallBoysFantasyBasketball. Joined as always, the guru himself, Callum Mack. How are you, man?
Yes, doing well inside, undercover, avoiding some of the flash flooding happening throughout Australia these days.
Yeah, lots of rain to come as well, as we're deep in the wet season over here. But look, I don't mind as long as it keeps the temperatures down. Up here in Brizzy, you can get a bit hot.
Yeah, that's it. Look, we'll have to have a shout out to Steph Curry because that's wet, boy. All-Star weekend. I just wanted to slide that in there. 16 three-pointers.
That was a great transition.
It flowed, man. It flowed.
Yeah. Not stretched at all. But yeah, big All-Star weekend. We got together and watched a bit of the All-Star Saturday night, which, the dunk contest. Well, let's touch on it real quick. Probably not the best dunk contest we've ever seen in the world, but hey, we got to have some laughs and catch up, and it was good for all the wrong reasons, I'll say.
Yeah, it was funny. Like, we honestly still had a good time about it. We just kind of made fun of it for what it was. One of the worst dunk contests that we've had, sadly. I'd like to see maybe Jalen Green get into it again and just try some other dunks, because whatever he was doing that time, obviously it failed quite heavily, but maybe a bit more practice. I don't know. But in the end, look, I think Obi did win it, and I was kind of happy that he got the title.
Yeah, I think his dunks were creative, and obviously if he'd got them a few more on the first go, it would have been a bit more impressive. But yeah, I don't know, man. This dunk contest, like 2016, like Lavine and Aaron Gordon, it's strung me along for these past like 5 or 6 years, and I'm hoping we'll get something close to that. But I don't know, it's probably a bit of fool's hope. I reckon let's just get the pro dunkers in there, and I don't know, do something like that. But anyway, let's not worry about the All-Star weekend, because I don't know if anyone has the answer to that. Let's move on to the rest of the fantasy season, and usually around this time of the year, we like to have a bit of an update on all the injuries and things like that, because we're getting really close to our fantasy playoffs. We're going to have to make some hard decisions, some hard cuts, some hard holds. Our fantasy playoffs in our leagues is literally next week. Some fantasy playoffs will be starting the week or two after that. But we've got to make some calls. So let's start with a few of the obvious ones. Some of the ones that are either confirmed out for the season or that we are suspecting are going to be out for at least the fantasy season, maybe coming back right at the end of the regular season in the NBA or for the playoffs for their teams. We've got a list here. I'll go through about 5 players. Damian Lillard. I'm also suspecting Paul George is out for the season. Bradley Beal is confirmed out for the season. Norman Powell has not been confirmed out for the season, but broken foot. I don't think he's coming back in time for our fantasy playoffs. And Gordon Hayward, I should say, is also someone who I suspect to be out for the fantasy playoffs. Maybe he might sneak back in for the regular season, but I don't think he's someone that we can afford to hold. Do you disagree with any of those guys, or have you seen anything that makes you think that there's like a chance that they might come back? Maybe some of those bigger names, Cal, or what are your thoughts?
The only guy that is a possible chance would be Paul George.
Yeah.
He could slide in there. He's actually getting another MRI on his elbow. I think that's tomorrow, February 25th in America. And things could change after that. So keep an eye on him and his update. For now, obviously, you just kind of assume that he is out indefinitely. So we're waiting that update. Yeah. And in the meantime, the usual suspects like Luke Kennard and Marcus Morris and those kind of guys will reap the benefits as they have been.
Yeah, so you're not ready to drop Paul George or anything just yet. You're still waiting till we hear some more information, especially if obviously the playoffs haven't started yet for any leagues, but hopefully we'll have a bit more information soon.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think in about 48 hours, you'll be able to make the call on PG. But yeah, otherwise, those other names, Dame Lil, Norm Powell, Bradley Beal. Unfortunately, like I had Bradley Beal on one of my teams. Unfortunate, but yeah, he's just going to have to be cut. And I'm not hopeful at winning that one.
Yeah, no, in that league, you've been struck fairly hard by the injury bug, unfortunately. So, pull my glass out for you. I think I agree with Paul George. I think obviously, I think we are going to learn that he is going to be out for the season. So I'm maybe jumping the gun a little bit earlier here, but there is a chance that he does come back. Obviously, the Clippers don't have their pick, so they're trying to do whatever they can to get into the playoffs and make something of this season. But a lot of things are not going their way. They've got a lot of injuries over in their roster, so there's no real need to force Paul George to come back. But I would agree, someone of that talent, someone who you've probably picked either first or second in your fantasy draft, you're just going to hold on to them. Nothing really you can do, but just I'd be preparing myself to be without him in your fantasy playoffs. If you've managed to make it that far, if you've managed to draft him, and maybe Bradley Beal as well, who was definitely a combo that we liked at the start of the season, and I did in one of my teams, and yeah, didn't go so well for me. Let's go on to, we're going to go break them down to teams, some of the big key note players. We might not get to every injury in this video/podcast today, but just sort of touching on the ones that we deem the most relevant. But if there's any other questions you guys have about injuries, drop them down in the comments on the YouTube video. And while you're there, give us a little sneaky thumbs up. Let's talk about there's a thumb there, Cal. Let's talk about the Brooklyn Nets, Kevin Durant and Ben Simmons. Bit of news today bit of optimism that they might be returning soon. I think the direct quote was they wouldn't expect them back within the next 3 or 4 days, but knowing those guys, we wouldn't rule it out. So positive news. I was expecting Kevin Durant to be out a little bit longer. Ben Simmons, who knows? But it sounds like there's a possibility that they might be returning. Probably not this week, but maybe sometime next week. So just in time for the fantasy playoffs for most leagues.
Yeah, that's kind of like what I'm thinking as well. Durant should make it just in time. May miss a bit of the first matchup, so fingers crossed it's not too prolonged. Ben Simmons, probably, similar timeline. I'm not too sure. It could be one of those week-by-week things, and he may let you down. There is a bit of a legal battle that he has to somewhat keep in mind, and maybe jumping on the court may not be in his interest to rush it, but apparently he's ramping up. Apparently he's getting ready to play. Yeah. So at this point, signs point to a pretty positive outcome for you.
Yeah, the good news about Ben Simmons is obviously he's not actually injured. So he doesn't have any physical injuries or anything like that. So once he is back, you would expect that he should be able to hit the ground running. Now, he might take a little bit of time to get used to his new team and playing with his new teammates. Maybe his conditioning might be a bit subpar. But in terms of a minute's load or anything like that, I'm not too worried about Ben Simmons from that point of view. Kevin Durant, obviously, he's their prized possession, so I do imagine that he might take a bit of ramping up once he is back. The minutes might be limited, so do keep that in mind and make sure you stay looking out on the news in terms of what their plan is with that. But it's Kevin Durant. Even in limited minutes, he's probably going to be better than your worst player on your bench. So I would be pretty keen to activate him pretty much as soon as he's good to go. Who does this hurt, and what does this do to the rotation once these guys come back over in Brooklyn, Cal?
I guess the main guys reaping the benefits would be, LaMarcus Aldridge has kind of been at times the number one option on the team. Even Cam Thomas has had a pretty good run. So those guys would be potential drop targets with both these guys back, Kevin Durant and Ben Simmons. I would still expect maybe LaMarcus Aldridge to hold a bit of his overall fantasy value. Cam Thomas probably would point to more of a drop candidate unless, obviously Kyrie is out for some of those home games.
Yeah, I think you can use the Kyrie schedule to your advantage and see what's going on with Cam Thomas. But yeah, I think as well as him, I think obviously Myles and Seth Curry and all those guys that are putting up points and handling the ball are going to lose value. They're still probably going to be putting up threes, maybe a trickle of some decent points and free throw percentage there, but they're all fairly shallow fantasy players anyway. So as soon as you get that usage hit, their value kind of just evaporates into nothing, and they're really just like those 3-point streamers on any given night. They can go off, but consistently they're not really reliable players. So I think all of those guys take a hit. I think LaMarcus Aldridge is probably the safest of the ones we mentioned, but like you said, their center rotation, like Nicholas Claxton hasn't been playing the last few games. That might change. They flip the coin every other time they go out to the court. So again, not the most reliable player, but for now, I'd still be holding on to LaMarcus Aldridge. Let's talk about another big name in the fantasy world, Anthony Davis. Just before the All-Star game, just before the All-Star break, mid-foot sprain, and it's confirmed that he's out for at least 4 weeks. So that's when they're going to reevaluate him, which basically confirms that he's out of the playoffs for fantasy. Just because he's reevaluated in 4 weeks doesn't mean he's back in 4 weeks. So it's probably longer. It's probably more like 5-6 weeks. So unless you're completely healthy and you've got no other injuries and you've just got an IR spot sitting there, I think you basically have to drop Anthony Davis, which is unfortunate news for you there, Callum, who's fighting to get that last spot in the playoffs. You currently sit in the playoffs right now, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm going to hold on to him. I don't want to be that guy that drops him. And then I feel like in my league, if someone picks him up and he's there in like the finals week, that team should just win. And it could be a ruining the league kind of move. So
well, I don't know.
Based on that, look, we have good mates in our league, as you're aware. I think I will hold on to him down and have some hope that he may return in maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And if I make it that far, it's unlikely. But for the advice to the fantasy world out there, it's unfortunate, but I guess at this point, if you drop him, I don't blame you. You're recommending that he is dropped, Mitch.
I think so. Like, I think if you've got, it's at this time of the year, it's not about the best player that like takes priority on your IR spot. It's about who's returning the soonest. And like, say you've got, I don't know, someone like, I don't know, we're going to talk about it a bit later, but someone like Alex Caruso, for example, versus an Anthony Davis. Like, Caruso sounds like he's going to be back before Anthony Davis. So I'd almost just rather keep Caruso on my IR, sacrifice Anthony Davis, because there's every chance in the world that I'm not going to get to use him. I might be out of the playoffs by that time. So it's all about survival at this time of the year. And especially for someone like yourself, where you're on the fringe of the playoffs, you're not guaranteed a spot in there. I would be totally, like, I don't think it would ruin our league at all from a what's the word, like a moral standpoint or a fairness standpoint. I think you're in every right to drop Anthony Davis, because I think it is the best thing for your team if you need to do it.
Yeah, and it's the fact that it's reevaluated in 4 weeks as well.
It's not confirmed he's back in 4 weeks.
Well, yeah, it's a bit of a blow. It definitely hurts.
Yeah, it's a sucky one. And Anthony Davis, I keep trying to stick my neck out for him. I'm like, he just gets these weird injuries, but yeah, he just doesn't seem to be able to stay healthy. And this Lakers team is not going anywhere anytime soon. So let's move on from Anthony Davis. Let's talk about another really unfortunate news. Guy's been healthy for a little while now, but Chris Paul has had a right thumb avulsion fracture, and he's out for 6 to 8 weeks, which is confirmed basically the entire rest of the fantasy season. So he's a drop. No ifs or buts about it. He's already been dropped in our league. I did tweet this out, but I think Campaign is a must-roster player. He's been confirmed that he's coming back the first game after the All-Star break, so that's good news. We weren't sure at the time, but he looks like he's coming back, and I think Campaign is going to be the big beneficiary here. Do you see it any way different, Cal?
I think that's how it's going to go. Definitely Campaign should be picked up in every league right now. He will give you assists, threes, points,
steals.
He's definitely a must-take. I'll just give a bit of I'll just nod my hat to Chris Paul. Great season. It's unfortunate he didn't make the playoffs. 13th on a per-game basis. When you take in the value of total games played as well, he's the third-ranked player. So tremendous season for him. Really unfortunate for fantasy owners. If you had a Chris Paul, Anthony Davis pairing, I feel for you. It's not your year.
Yeah, no, that sucks. I mean, yeah, he was a good pick up until then. It's just the timing of the injury. Like, if you had this injury a couple of months ago, it's no big deal. I mean, it's obviously sucks, but it's just obviously the worst timing for this sort of thing to happen. And hopefully you can overcome it. But that's a big hit to your assists and steals there. So see how you go. But Campaign, obviously the guy that had the Chris Paul player in our league picked up Campaign, so at least he salvaged it a little bit, and hopefully he can make it work. But I know his team's been hit pretty hard by injury as well. Let's move on to the next player now. James Harden What are your thoughts? What have you heard about James Harden and when he's coming back? I would have to assume it's not too far away. But what have you heard anything different or more concrete timetable than I have?
No, not really. I'm kind of considering him like a day by day. He's got the left hamstring. He has been, there's been videos of him warming up and being in some kind of drills with the Sixers. So I'm assuming that a day by day thing. So for fantasy owners, you got to keep hold of him for now.
Yeah, obviously you keep a hold of him now. He's someone who, look, I reckon he probably could have played before the All-Star game, but I reckon he had to kind of save face a little bit. It would have been a bad look.
He was the last pick in the draft, right? I think he was a bit hurt by that.
I think the whole way it went down, obviously he had this hamstring injury. He might have had a little bit of a tight hamstring or something like that. He's had hamstring issues in the past. So, maybe the injury was there, but the timing was all just very suspect. So, look, I think there's definitely a scenario or a possibility that the hamstring injury wasn't too legit. He got traded. It would have been really suspect if he played the first game back after the trade. So he's trying to save face a little bit. The All-Star game's around the corner. Let's just, I've had my rest now and now I'm ready to go. So I wouldn't be surprised if he rocks up the first game after the All-Star break or maybe 1 or 2 games later. So I think he's right around the corner. Who's this going to hurt on the Philadelphia 76 when James Harden does come in?
I think the biggest suspect will be Maxey. He'll be taking the ball out of his hands. The roster isn't super deep on the guards, but I guess so Maxey probably will get staggered some minutes. So I'd keep hold of him and see what happens for now. But I think obviously overall it will be a net negative for him.
Yeah, I think I agree. I don't think you should drop Tyrese Maxey when James Harden comes in. Keep a hold of him, but when you get to the playoffs, you might find that Tyrese Maxey is one of your worst 2 or 3 players, and at that point, then it's maybe more valuable streaming that position, depending on how close your matchups are and what categories and things you need in category leagues. So just keep that in mind. You won't have too long to evaluate it in the playoffs, so it's going to be a bit tight. But hopefully James Harden comes back soon, so you can at least have a look and see how that works. I also think that Tobias Harris gets a bit of a hit as well, going from the second option down to the third. What do you think about Joel Embiid? Do you think Joel Embiid still's just the man there, or are we seeing more James Harden ISO ball? What do you think? How do you think that's going to work out?
I think he will get affected negatively because James Harden does demand the ball, and Joel Embiid, he's leading the league in points right now. He's up there in usage as well. Yeah. So you have to say that's going to drop down. Yeah,
you would hope that he's still the number 1 guy though. Surely James Harden's okay being the second banana in that offense. So I'm not too worried about Joel Embiid. There's nothing you can do about it anyway. So I think you should expect a similar level of production with maybe just a slight hit in points. But I think he'll be okay. Let's talk about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, everyone's favorite shutdown candidate. I think he's going to be coming back. I don't think he's going to be shut down. The good news is he posted on Instagram. And on Instagram, he posted, in quotation marks, "be back soon." So that's not any kind of firm timetable or anything like that, but it's good news. I think it means that hopefully he's not going to be shut down. Now, we've seen be back soon or he'll be back in a minute before and all these other things. So it might still be a week or a couple of weeks away, but it is overall positive because we were considering him to be a bit of a shutdown risk. It probably would have been a bad look if they did it 2 years in a row. So I am confident he's going to come back at some point. So I would be holding on to him if I can. What are your thoughts on Shai there, Cal?
Yeah, I agree. You got to hold on to him. It was only a right ankle sprain. We just know with the history of the OKC Thunder. But they've lost enough games at this point that they're obviously going to get a high draft pick. I think it's in their interest to give him some run with Josh Giddey, just get some chemistry. So he will be playing. He may rest games here and there. That's something to be aware of, this dude rest here and there. And talking to Josh Giddey, unfortunately, he probably will be the guy that takes the biggest hit. I didn't realize how much of a step forward it would take with I
called it, man. I told you. I did say that one.
He was killing it. So that was a big shout out to Money Mitch there. Well done, well played. He's been killing it. Triple doubles, 24 points. Shout out to the Aussie, Josh Giddey. But unfortunately, look, the value will drop down it only makes sense because Shai obviously demands the ball a fair bit.
Yeah. I think obviously they're still going to be cautious. He's still going to rest games, and like if he's got a little niggle or soreness, like he'll sit out and things like that. He probably will have his minutes limited coming back and all these sort of things. So he's going to be annoying to own, but if you can take any positive away, I'm more confident that he's not going to be shut down after seeing that little bit of information. Let's move on to the Chicago Bulls. They've got a few guys that we've got to talk about. Zach Lavine, first of all. Thank God it sounds like we've avoided a serious injury. He obviously flew over to LA, I think it was, and got scans and a second opinion and all these sort of things, but he's going to play through. I think he had a cortisone injection, so he should be good to go. If not the first game after the playoffs, after the All-Star break, he'll only miss one or two more games and should be good for your fantasy playoffs. So that's all good. Alex Caruso looks like he's beating his timetable. He was initially sort of out the same amount of time as Lonzo Ball, but it looks like Caruso is going to come back a bit before Lonzo. So whilst he's still probably a couple of weeks away, he might not be someone who's worth like stashing. I would just be keeping an eye on him. Unless you've got a completely healthy roster, which, at this part of the year, it's quite rare. But I think he's someone just to keep an eye on. Would you be willing to stash Caruso if you were, desperate for steals, or what are your thoughts on him in terms of someone to keep an eye on?
Yeah, probably not, unless you're doing a build where steals are critical for you to win. Some of those heavy guard lineups, for example, and you just have to win the steals. Then fair enough. But otherwise, I don't quite think it's worthy to stash him, just because that's really the only category he does.
Maybe a little bit of assists, but again, it's not anything crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Zach
Lavine, he should be back, so I'm hyped for that. Let's go on this Bulls run. I'm actually all on the hype train. Yeah,
well, I'm thankful too because he's in my lineup, and I also had Lonzo Ball in my team, so I couldn't afford another Chicago Bull to get taken away from me. So that's a good news for my team. Lonzo Ball looks like he's still another 3 to 4 weeks away. He's someone who obviously was doing really well prior to the injury. Keep an eye out, but again, it's going to be one of those cases that if you need to drop him, if you've got other players that are injured that are coming back sooner, when you get into the playoffs, you want to have as many healthy bodies as you possibly can. So if you need to, you've got my go-ahead to drop him. If you can hold on to him, I do. Like, I love Lonzo Ball. He's one of my guys in fantasy and has been for many years, but it is tough, especially when you get to fantasy playoffs, to hold those dead weights, especially when we're thinking that they're going to be out for a little while longer. What are your thoughts about Lonzo? Have you heard anything more about his return from injury?
No, not really. I think you summed it up probably as best you can. Fingers crossed he returns soon. Those steals are elite. 5.5 rebounds, 5 assists, fits that punt field goal build that you have working on your team so well.
The threes. He's also giving you good blocks for a guard. He's just a good fantasy player all across the board. Always criminally underrated. Let's move on to the Indiana Pacers. A few little murky things in this roster, but it looks like they've got a couple of their guys coming back. Myles Turner and Malcolm Brogdon. The reports are that they're both coming back shortly after the All-Star break. It's not, again, a concrete timetable, similar to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Myles Turner was reported to be back soon after the All-Star break, was the direct quote, and that was on February 12th, so nearly a couple of weeks ago. So hopefully in the next week or so, we'll have a firmer idea of his timetable. He's a tough one to hold because, like Shai, it'll be annoying. He'll be in and out, I reckon. There's going to be phantom injuries, rest days, monitored minutes. So whilst I like to hold on to him, if we find out in the next couple of days or in the next week or so that he's still another 2 or 3 weeks away, then I think you can drop him. But it is still a bit more vague at the moment. So what are your thoughts about Myles Turner and Malcolm Brogdon and the Pacers?
We kind of touched on, especially Turner previously, just for being on shutdown watch. At this point, you could go either way. It's 50-50. You have to hold on to him because he could be back. There was a left foot injury a few weeks ago. You would like to see him get some chemistry maybe with Halliburton and some of the new guys they brought over.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, they're obviously tanking. They want to lose games. So it's a hard one. It could be the Shai of last season. they will be pretty cautious with him. Brogdon, honestly, he's been out for a long time now. Maybe they just keep him out and just make sure he's healthy. There's no real. I mean, it was the Achilles, the sore Achilles. So there is argument, obviously, to be pretty conservative on that front. So if you're an owner there, like in some leagues, I think he has been dropped, and I don't quite blame people. I'm looking at Myles now in fantasy. For some reason, saying his preseason rank was 111. That seems very wrong.
Yeah, I don't think he was. I think there's some whack.
But if his rank right now, it's 26 on a per game basis, and it's based on those blocks. If you had him, he was putting up good field goals as well. It's hard to replace someone like that with the 2.8 blocks a game.
Yeah, obviously Turner's obviously the bigger fancy player there, and obviously someone in terms of the paces are much more. You could see him sticking around for next year. I don't know if I can't see Malcolm Brogdon being part of this team's future, so I don't think they're going to really care too much about prioritizing him for minutes and things like that, even when he does come back. So if we do get more information in the next couple of days that he's out another week or two, again, if he's like one of your injured players that's a bit further back in the timetables, I'd be okay with moving on from him. With Halliburton there, he's a bit of a loser anyway in terms of his value. Turner, obviously, I'd be holding until I get more information, but it is a tough one because it's just there's so unclear, and the direction of this roster and this organization makes you worried about shutdowns and random rest days. But obviously, Turner's too valuable to sort of just drop when he could be coming back soon after the break. So cross your fingers for that one. When he does come back, obviously, a lot of those guys we've been talking about, Isaiah Jackson, Goga, Jalen, all those guys, even Brissett to a certain extent, take a bit of a hit. And obviously Brogdon coming back will impact Halliburton. Someone who's the rookie, what's the rookie's name? I'm having a blank.
Duarte?
Yeah, Duarte.
Big Chris Duarte.
Yeah, he might even be a droppable candidate. Do you reckon if Brogdon comes back that you could drop Duarte?
I think you're right. I mean,
he's not been great anyway.
He can play the 3, so you could keep an eye on it. But they're also injured right now.
Yeah, he's got a sore big toe. I think he'll be back.
Like you've got the likes of TJ McConnell, and he's obviously been out for a very long time now. They're Buddy, who I keep kind of forgetting. So he does demand some minutes now with the injuries. He's been putting up like 40 minutes a game.
Yeah.
But Duarte does have an injury right now. It is quite minor. I'd probably still keep hold of him then.
Yeah, I probably would too. I think just like I can't remember who we mentioned before, but like it was Maxey. Like keep a hold of him, but like just be aware that he might end up being like the worst player in your team, and if you need to stream that spot, it's not the end of the world. But just keep that on. But hold him until you have more concrete information. Let's fly through these last few guys. Kristaps Porzingis is reportedly going to make his debut on the 25th, which is the first game after the All-Star break. So, look, the shutdown doesn't look like it's happening at this stage. It's likely going to impact a few different players. Daniel Gafford, Thomas Bryant, Danny Avdija. Although Danny Avdija I'm not too sure about. He's playing really well. I'm very interested to see where Porzingis is playing and if he's playing 4 or 5 or how they're going to use that rotation. How do you see it playing out when KP's back?
I think as a fantasy owner, it's a big win that he is playing because obviously you have to keep a pretty steady eye on him because he will be on shutdown watch if anything does happen. Yeah. But he should be the number one option. He should be the number one scoring option. Obviously, Bradley Beal is out for the season. I would expect big things for him. Honestly, I'd be pretty excited to see what he puts up.
Yeah, I think as a Kristaps side of things goes, he should be getting a lot of offense going through him. There's not a whole lot of offense on this roster, to be honest, at all. You got Kyle Kuzma, who's basically their main dude right now. So I think on a per game basis, he's going to be a winner. But again, similar like some of these other guys, a few annoying injuries is all it's going to take to sort of derail his end of the season. But obviously, you've got to hold on to him and just cross your fingers that doesn't happen. Let's touch on some of the guys that are affected. I want to touch on Danny Avdija in particular. What do you think about KP's impact on Avdija's minutes and where he's going to be playing? Because he's been someone who's been playing really well recently. He's been getting a lot of rebounds, coming off the bench, but still putting up maybe 30 minutes a game. What do you think about Avdija? Is he impacted by Kristaps, or is it more the big guys in Gafford and Bryant?
I think there will be a slight impact there. The good thing about Avdija is he is quite, he can play actually a lot of positions. He can play even the 2 guards he can handle. They even said, you said last time that they were going to potentially run some plays through him as a bit of a point.
There hasn't been so much point guard stuff going on, but he's definitely getting more of a run.
Yeah, it just really depends how, like, the defensive side of things just may not make a lot of sense on a lot of lineups, because with Kristaps and Kuzma out there, you probably say that should be a 4-5 punch, and then you got people like Gafford and Thomas Bryant still in town, and Avdiya's kind of like that similar body to Kuzma, where he's obviously a big guy on the perimeter, can hit the shot, make some plays. But the defensive aspect, it's hard to know how that's going to work. So based on that, there are question marks.
Yeah, I mean they've been running lineups of Kuzma, Avdiya, and Thomas Bryant. So if they obviously don't give a shit about defense too much, to be honest. So that's a positive, at least going in Avdiya's direction, that they don't really seem to care.
Yeah, that's right. I think the Thomas Bryant experiment this year hasn't really worked out for them very well. So,
and he's not under contract with them next year. He's actually a free agent. So I don't really see them prioritizing. I know I keep saying that, and they keep giving him bloody minutes over Daniel Gafford, but Gafford's the one that got the extension. Bryant is not on their team next year, I don't think, at all. So it stands to reason that they're going to try and build for the future. There's often like a reset, like a reevaluation period at the All-Star break. So I'm still clinging on to the fact that I think Bryant's going to be the one that's going to be out of the rotation. You'll still have Gafford coming off the bench, and maybe Porzingis starting at the 5. And then Avdiya is still that like 6-man kind of role. So I still think he's going to hold value, but maybe the like big rebound numbers that we've been seeing might take a slight hit. But someone who if you've picked up, I would still just wait a few games and see how you go. But that's why I've been sort of prioritizing a few other guys over Avdiya in terms of the waiver wire acquisitions, because I'm just not sure how Kristaps is going to impact him when he's back. But we will see, hopefully, on the 25th when KP's back. Let's talk about Draymond Green, another guy in your Dynasty League who's another injured player. He said he's going to be out basically another 3 to 4 weeks at least. So, again, he looks like he is going to be a drop pretty much, unless your fantasy players start a lot later, or if you have a completely healthy team, you can store him on IR and not affect your team. But he's someone who, like a few other guys we mentioned, I would be fine with you dropping him just because he's not going to come back anytime soon.
Yeah, sad but true. That's the situation. And I feel like Golden State have locked in pretty much the 2 or 3 seed. It's really this Memphis a bit at their toes there. So there's no real great deal to rush him, because
that's right.
Phoenix are about 5 games ahead or something pretty crazy. That being said, the Chris Paul being out will affect it. Maybe they do try and make a push, but I think Golden State are pretty happy just to chill, just let Draymond have some rest, make sure he's healthy for the playoffs where they're looking to make a bit of a push. So as a fantasy owner, that does suck. He's a guy that gave you good defensive stats with about 8 assists a game, led that team in assists. So it does hurt, but it isn't a team where everyone did decide to go down in injuries. So it was a bit of a lost cause to me on that. We know he fits the points build. Yeah. That's what he's there for. At this point, you just have to get rid of him on your fantasy roster and try and get someone else, stream a few players. Yeah, it does suck. It does suck because those assists are hard to replace off the waiver wire. But yeah, I think, like you said, they're obviously their goal is the playoffs. They want to win in the playoffs, so they're not going to rush him back. Even when he does come back, I can easily see them ramping up his minutes quite slowly just to make sure that he's fit and firing for the playoffs and nothing else. So, assess your team, assess who else you've got injured on your roster. If you've got other players coming back before him, then he's probably, come playoff time, someone you can feel okay dropping if that's what it takes. Let's move on to the last guy we'll talk about today, or the second last guy. We'll mention one guy at the end. John Collins. He had a bit of a foot thing going on. Was it a foot thing? Basically, there was an update today that he's still not running. He's not participating in practice. I think before the All-Star break, the thought was that he was going to come back straight after, but it looks like he's going to be out a bit longer. So bit of news there. See how this affects the team. I think, obviously, Gallinari is the streamer there. Obviously not going to give you the same stats that John Collins is, but obviously one of the few free throw percentage boosting players that we can pick up off the waiver wire. And also I think that someone like Onyeka Okongwu also is a slight winner in this situation as well. Is anyone else you think, or maybe Capella as well, gets a bit of a boost? Anything else that you think that this affects from John Collins being out, and how long do you expect him to be out? Firstly, I think you mentioned the guys that would benefit. Capella, a bit of a buff, I guess. But then, Onyeka, I think should get some more time, and Gallinari will start. And Gallinari is definitely a guy that I think should be rostered in most leagues right now. He can really carry you in free throw percentage. And now that he's got, I guess, some more minutes locked in that starting lineup, he'll get threes. He can get some points as well. Low turnovers. So people should definitely go pick him up. But yeah, it's pretty sad for John Collins fans. He's on one of my punt assist builds. I think that is where he's best molded to. And at this point, it makes me a bit concerned.
You've had a rough go. You've had a rough go with injuries this year, haven't you, Cal?
I'm not doing well, unfortunately. That team had Anthony Davis and my punt assist build as well.
Oh, yeah.
And that has hurt me.
Yeah. No, not a rough go. And then obviously you had the Rashawn Holmes and everything. Yeah, it's rough time to be on Callum's fantasy team. So
yeah, the punt assist build is hurting this year.
Yeah.
Those guys are all big punt assist candidates.
All those big guys. For sure. Yeah, all those big guys going down. But yeah, I think it's tough. Like, obviously not being able to do any running or practice at all, like, that's not a good sign, man. And like, I don't know what this Hawks team is doing. That I think that they're still obviously in the play-in hunt, but they're obviously underperforming expectations. I'm just checking where they are in the standings currently right now. I know that they were
in the play-in around the 10th spot.
Yeah, so they're currently sitting in 10th right now, and the teams below them are Washington and New York. So obviously there's not too much in terms of a threat beneath them, but they're only 1 game ahead of Washington, 4 games ahead of the Knicks. So I would still pick them to make it in there, obviously, with players like Trae Young leading the team. But I don't know, man. Like, there's just always a bit of noise around, like, John Collins in particular in Atlanta, that he might just take a little bit longer coming back to the court than we would initially expect. So I don't know if Gallinari is a must-roster player. He obviously gives you a few specific things, but I do think that he's someone worth streaming in, especially if you need those threes and free throw percentage. All right, and the last guy we want to just touch on, just shout out to this guy, and shout out to this organization, really. Jonathan Isaac. No news, nothing to report, but just want to remind you guys that he's out there. He's out there. At least I think he is. Do you know if he's still alive, Cal? Have you heard anything about John?
I don't know. I think at this point we have to consider if he is a unicorn.
Yeah, like a myth. Like
Porzingis was a unicorn for a while. Maybe Jonathan Isaac is the new unicorn. Does he exist?
Yeah,
I'm not too sure. The last update on him was the 26th of November. So we're tracking back a quarter of a year, unfortunately. And that goes for Markelle Fultz, his Magic teammate as well. So they're obviously keeping it pretty quiet in that organization while they tank for high draft pick. Yeah, they're bringing a new meaning to the phrase fantasy players, because they might just be our fantasy. We might not even think that they're real. So shout out to you, Orlando Magic, Jonathan Isaac, and Markelle Fultz. Excellent reporting. We've got last year we had Jaren Jackson Jr. This year we've got Jonathan Isaac. So there seems to be one every year. So shout out to NBA teams and reporting your injuries. Let's wrap it up there, Cal. If you are liking the content, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, subscribe to all our podcasts, give the video a big thumbs up, and let us know if you have any questions going into the fantasy playoffs, and we'll catch you guys next time. Bye.